The alarms screamed through the station like dying animals. Red lights flashed on every wall. People ran in all directions, pushing and shoving, trying to reach the escape pods before it was too late. Park Do-yoon moved against the crowd. While everyone else ran away from danger, he ran toward it. That was his job. That was what soldiers did. He was 32 years old. His face was hard and tired. His eyes had seen too much death in 11 years of war. The other soldiers called him the Wall because he never left anyone behind. He would rather die than abandon a wounded friend. The Valori had attacked without warning. 3 of their massive warships had appeared from nowhere and started firing at Kevin's station. The station was just a civilian outpost. Families lived here. Children played in its halls. It was not a military target, but the Valori did not care. Do-yoon had fought the Valori for most of his adult life. He knew what they looked like. They were tall creatures, like giant insects. They had hard shells covering their bodies, 4 arms instead of 2, and large compound eyes that looked like thousands of tiny mirrors pressed together. Their mouths had sharp mandibles that clicked when they spoke. The Valori believed they were the greatest species in the galaxy. They looked at humans the way humans looked at ants. Something small. Something to be crushed. The war had started 11 years ago when the Valori decided they wanted human space. They did not ask. They did not negotiate. They simply attacked. Millions of humans died in the first year alone. Now Do-hyun ran through the burning corridors of Kevin's station, his rifle in his hands, his heart pounding in his chest. His squad had been helping civilians reach the escape pods, but an explosion had separated him from his team. Now he was alone. The ceiling above him groaned and cracked. Pieces of metal fell around him like rain. The station was dying. He needed to find another way out. He turned down a side corridor and found himself in what used to be a medical bay. The room was destroyed. Tables were overturned. Medical equipment was scattered everywhere. Fires burned in the corners. Bodies lay on the floor. Do-hyun stopped. He heard something. A small sound. A clicking noise. It came from under one of the overturned tables. He raised his rifle and moved slowly toward the sound. His finger rested on the trigger. Every muscle in his body was ready to fight. He kicked the table aside, and he froze. A purse. Valori child stared up at him. She was small. Very small. She barely reached his waist. Her shell was not the dark black or green of adult Valori. It was pale lavender, soft and delicate. She had not yet grown into her adult form. She was terrified. Her forearms were wrapped around herself. Her compound eyes reflected Do-hyun's face 100 times over. She made small clicking sounds of fear. Beside her lay the body of an adult Valori. The adult was dead. Perhaps it had been the child's guardian. Perhaps it had been a diplomat or a prisoner on the station. Do-hyun did not know. All he knew was that the child was alone. His rifle pointed at her head. Every rule told him what to do. She was the enemy. Her species had killed millions of his people. Her species had burned his home planet. Her species had taken everything from him. He should pull the trigger. But she was a child. Her small body shook with fear. She looked up at him with those strange mirror eyes, and Do-hyun saw something he recognized. He saw the same fear he had seen in human children. The same helplessness. The same desperate hope that maybe, somehow, the scary thing would go away. She was not a soldier. She was not a warrior. She was just a child who was afraid and alone. Do-hyun's hands began to shake. He thought about his sister. She had died in the first Valori attack when their colony was destroyed. She had been 8 years old. Sometimes, in his nightmares, he still heard her screaming. The Valori child made another clicking sound. It was soft and sad, almost like crying. Do-hyun lowered his rifle. He did not know why. He could not explain it. Something inside him simply refused to hurt or die at that moment. The ceiling exploded. A Valori missile had hit the station directly above them. Fire and metal came crashing down. Do-hyun had less than a second to react. He did not think. His body moved on its own. He threw himself over the child. He wrapped his arms around her small form and curled his body into a protective shell. He tucked his head down and pressed her against the floor, covering her completely with his own body. The world became fire and pain. Something heavy smashed into his back. He felt his ribs crack. His left arm twisted in a way arms should not twist. Hot metal burned through his armor and into his flesh. Blood filled his mouth. He screamed, but he did not move. He kept his body over the child. He became a shield. The ceiling continued to fall. More debris hit him. More pain exploded through his body. He felt himself dying, but the child beneath him was safe. Not a single piece of debris touched her. Finally, the falling stopped. The dust began to settle. The fires crackled and hissed around them. Do-hyun could not move. His body was broken. He lay in the darkness, bleeding, barely breathing, still wrapped around the enemy child. The child's compound eyes looked up at him. She was not hurt. Not even a scratch. She made a soft clicking sound. Not fear this time. Something else. Something that sounded almost like a question. Do-hyun tried to speak, but only blood came out. He had saved her. He did not know why. He just knew that it was the right thing to do. As darkness crept into the edges of his vision, he felt small claws grip his sleeve. The child held on to him and did not let go. And somewhere in the burning ruins of Kevin's station, an enemy became something else entirely. Hours passed in the darkness. Do-hyun drifted between sleep and waking, between life and death. Every breath hurt. Every heartbeat sent waves of pain through his broken body. The child did not leave him. She stayed pressed against his chest, her small claws still gripping his sleeve. She made soft clicking sounds that rose and fell like a song. It was not words. Do-hyun did not understand the Valori language, but the sounds were gentle, almost comforting. She was trying to help him. In her own strange way, she was trying to keep him alive. Do-hyun opened his eyes. The medical bay was dark now. The fires had died down to small flames that flickered in the corners. Smoke hung thick in the air. He could hear the distant sounds of the station breaking apart around them. He looked down at the child. She looked back at him with her compound eyes. Each eye was made of hundreds of tiny lenses, and each lens reflected his bloody face back at him. He saw himself 1,000 times over in her gaze. She was so small. Her lavender shell was soft, not yet hardened into the armor of an adult Valori. Her forearms were thin and delicate. She could not have been more than 5 or 6 years old in human terms. What was she doing on the station? Why had she been in the medical bay with a dead adult? Do-hyun had so many questions, but he could not speak. His throat was full of blood. The child reached up with one of her small claws. Very gently, she touched his face. She traced the line of blood that ran from his mouth to his chin. Her touch was careful and curious. She clicked something. A word, maybe? Or a name. Do-hyun tried to smile. He did not know if she could understand human expressions, but he wanted her to know that she was safe, that he would not hurt her. She seemed to understand. Her clicking sounds became softer, calmer. She pressed closer to him and closed her eyes. She trusted him. This enemy child, whose species had killed millions of his people, trusted him completely. She had seen him shield her with his own body. She had watched him take the pain meant for her. And now she clung to him like he was the only safe thing in the universe. Do-hyun felt something strange in his chest. It was not pain, though there was plenty of that. It was something else. Something warm. He had spent 11 years hating the Valori, He had killed dozens of them in battle. He had watched them slaughter his friends, his family, his entire world. He had told himself that they were monsters, that they felt nothing, that they were not truly alive in the way humans were alive, but this child was alive. She was afraid and alone, and she needed someone to protect her. She was not a monster. She was just a child. More hours passed. Do-hyun grew weaker. He could feel his life slowly draining away. The blood loss was too much. His injuries were too severe. Without medical help, he would die. But he did not let go of the child. If he was going to die, he would die protecting her. That was all he could do now. That was all that mattered. The child seemed to sense that something was wrong. She began clicking louder, more urgently. Her small claws shook his arm as if trying to wake him up. She pressed her face against his chest and made sounds that were clearly distress. Do-hyun wanted to tell her that everything would be okay. He wanted to tell her not to be afraid. But he had no strength left for words. He closed his eyes. Then he heard voices, human voices, they were distant at first, but they grew closer. Flashlights cut through the darkness. Heavy boots crunched on broken metal. Someone shouted orders. The rescue team had found them. Do-hyun heard a gasp. Then silence. He could imagine what they were seeing. A human soldier, barely alive, wrapped around a Valori child. The enemy protecting the enemy. It made no sense. Someone knelt beside him. Hands touched his neck, checking for a pulse. The child hissed and clicked in alarm. She did not want these strangers near her human. She wrapped her arms tighter around Do-hyun and bared her small mandibles. Someone spoke. It was a man's voice, rough with shock. The man said that it was a Valori. He asked what they should do. Another voice answered. A woman. She was in charge. The woman said to get them both out. She said to call the medics. They tried to separate Do-hyun from the child, but she refused to let go. She clung to him with all four arms and screamed in her clicking language. She fought against the hands that tried to take him away. Finally, they gave up trying to separate them. They lifted Do-hyun onto a stretcher with the child still attached to him. She rode on his chest as they carried him through the ruined station, her claws gripping his bloody uniform. The rescue team looked at them with confusion and wonder. They had never seen anything like this. A human who had nearly died to save a Valori child. A Valori child who refused to leave her human protector. They reached the evacuation ship. Medics rushed forward with equipment and medicine. They worked on Do-hyun's wounds while the child watched with huge, frightened eyes. One medic tried to move her aside. She bit him. After that, they let her stay. Hours later, Do-hyun woke up in a proper medical bed. His wounds had been treated. His arm was in a cast. His ribs were wrapped tight. He was alive. The child was curled up at the foot of his bed, sleeping. A doctor stood nearby, looking at both of them with an expression Do-hyun could not read. Do-hyun asked what would happen to her. The doctor shook his head. He did not know. The story was already spreading. A human soldier who had shielded an enemy child with his own body. It was impossible. It was insane. It was the most human thing anyone had done in 11 years of war. Both sides were talking about it. Both sides wanted answers. Do-hyun looked at the sleeping child. Her lavender shell rose and fell with each breath. Her small claws twitched as she dreamed. He did not have answers. He only knew that he had made a choice in that burning room. A choice to protect instead of destroy. A choice to see a child instead of an enemy. He did not know what would come next. But looking at the peaceful face of the sleeping child, he knew he had done the right thing. She was alive. That was enough. The flagship of the Valori Empire moved through space like a dark moon. It was massive, larger than any human ship ever built. Its black hull absorbed light instead of reflecting it. To human eyes, it looked like a hole in the stars. On the bridge of this terrible ship stood High Commander Thyra. She was one of the 7 matriarchs who ruled the Valori Empire. Her bloodline was ancient, stretching back 10,000 years to the first Valori who crawled from the swamps of their home world. She had commanded fleets that burned entire star systems. She had personally overseen the destruction of 40 human colonies. Thyra was 8 feet tall. Her shell was black as the void between stars. Her eyes burned gold brighter than any other Valori. When she spoke, her voice was like thunder. When she moved, the very air seemed to tremble. She hated humans. She had always hated humans. They were weak, soft creatures with no shells, no claws, no natural weapons. They should have been easy to crush. But somehow, they kept fighting. Somehow, they refused to die. For 11 years she had tried to destroy them. For 11 years they had fought back. But none of that mattered now, because her daughter was alive. Thyra stood alone in her private chamber, watching a recording on a floating screen. The footage came from a security camera on Kevin's station. It showed the moment her daughter Vila was found. Thyra watched the human soldier stumble into the medical bay. She watched him raise his weapon at Vela. She watched his hand shake. She watched him lower the rifle. Then she watched the ceiling fall. The human moved faster than Thyra had thought possible. He threw himself over Vila and wrapped his body around her. He took every piece of falling metal on his own back. He was crushed, burned, broken. But he did not move. He did not let a single piece of debris touch her daughter. Thyra watched the recording again. And again. And again. She had killed thousands of humans. She had watched them die screaming. She had always believed they were animals, driven only by fear and greed. She had never imagined that a human could do something like this. He had saved her daughter, an enemy child. He had nearly died for her. Why? Thyra did not understand. It made no sense. Humans in Valori had been at war for over a decade. They hated each other. They killed each other without mercy. No human had any reason to save a Valori child, but this one had. Thyra felt something crack inside her chest. It was a feeling she had not felt in centuries. She did not even have a name for it anymore. She thought about her daughter. Little Vela with her soft lavender shell, her curious eyes, her endless questions about everything. Vila had been traveling with a diplomatic envoy when the attack happened. She should not have been on that station. She should not have been in danger, but she had been. And she had survived. Because of a human dot in Valori culture, there were laws older than the empire itself. Laws written in the blood and bone of their ancestors. One of these laws spoke of life debts. When someone saved your child, they became bound to your family forever. They were no longer a stranger. They were no longer an enemy. They were yours, and you were theirs. This bond was sacred. It could not be broken. Thyra knew what she had to do. She called her advisors to her chamber. They came quickly, bowing low before her. They were afraid of her. Everyone was afraid of her. She told them to send a message to the humans. Her advisors looked at each other with confusion. What message? What could their great commander want to say to the enemy? Thyra spoke slowly and clearly. She said that they would tell the humans that they wanted the soldier, the one who saved her daughter. She said that he belonged to them now. Her advisors gasped. This was madness. This was against everything they had fought for. They tried to argue, tried to explain that they could not simply ask for a human. Thyra silenced them with a look. She said that she did not ask for their opinions. She gave them an order. The message was sent. Across the stars, human commanders received the transmission. They were confused. The great Valori matriarch was asking for a single wounded soldier. Not demanding, asking. It was not a threat. It was not an ultimatum. It was a request that no one knew what to do. The story had already spread through human space. Everyone knew about Lieutenant Park Do-hyun, the soldier who had shielded an enemy child with his own body. Some called him a hero. Some called him a traitor. Some called him Crazy Dot, but now the Valori wanted him. And not to kill him, to claim him. The debates lasted for days. Politicians argued. Generals shouted. The whole human government was thrown into chaos. Finally, they decided to ask Do-hyun himself. He was still in the hospital, still recovering from his wounds. The Valori child Vela had not left his side. She slept at the foot of his bed every night. She ate her meals sitting next to him. When doctors came too close, she hissed and clicked in warning. The human officials came to Do-hyun with the message from Thyra. They explained what the Valori matriarch wanted. They told him he could refuse. No one would force him to go. Do-hyun listened in silence. When they finished speaking, he looked down at Vela. She looked back at him with her compound eyes. She did not understand what the adults were saying, but she understood that something important was happening. She reached out and took his hand with her small claws. Do-hyun made his decision. He said that he would go. The officials tried to argue. They warned him that it might be a trap. They said that the Valori might kill him as soon as he arrived. They said that he was taking a terrible risk. Do-hyun shook his head. He said that he had to know why. He said that he had to see this through Dot, and somewhere, across the vast darkness of space, High Commander Thyra waited for her answer. The human transport ship was small and alone in the vastness of space. It carried only one passenger. Park Do-hyun sat in the cargo hold, his hands folded in his lap, his eyes fixed on nothing. He was healed now, mostly. His arm still ached where it had been broken. His ribs still hurt when he breathed too deeply. But he was alive. He could walk. He could face whatever was coming. The Valori child Vela was not with him. The humans had insisted on keeping her as a guarantee. If Do-hyun was harmed, they would harm her in return. It was politics. It was war. Do-hyun hated it, but he understood. He had said goodbye to her before he left. She had cried. Her clicking sounds were loud and desperate as she reached for him with all four arms. She did not understand why he was leaving. She did not understand why she could not go with him. He had promised her that he would come back. He had promised her that everything would be okay. He hoped he was not lying. The transport ship dropped out of faster-than-light travel. Through the small window, Do-hyun saw the Valori diplomatic vessel waiting for them. It was sleek and dark, shaped like a giant insect with folded wings. Smaller ships surrounded it like guards around a queen. The transport docked with the Valori ship. The airlock opened with a hiss of pressure. Do-hyun stood up, straightened his simple civilian clothes, and walked forward. He expected guards. He expected weapons pointed at his face. He expected to be treated like a prisoner. Instead, he found an empty corridor lit with soft blue light. The walls were smooth and organic, like the inside of a shell. The air smelled strange but not unpleasant. There was no one waiting to hurt him. A single Valori stood at the end of the corridor. It was smaller than most, with a pale green shell and gentle eyes. It bowed its head in greeting and spoke in broken but understandable human language. The Valori said to follow. Do-hyun followed. They walked through the ship for what felt like hours. Every corridor looked the same. Every room was empty. The ship seemed designed to confuse, to disorient. Do-hyun lost track of where he was. Finally, they reached a great hall. It was the largest room Do-hyun had ever seen. The ceiling stretched up so high he could barely see it. The walls were covered with carvings that told stories in a language he could not read. Light came from everywhere and nowhere, soft and golden, and at the far end of the hall stood High Commander Thyra. Do-hyun Stop breathing, Dot. She was the most terrifying thing he had ever seen. 8 feet tall, shell black as death, eyes burning like twin suns. She radiated power the way a star radiated heat. Just looking at her made Do-hyun's legs weak. This was the creature who had destroyed 40 human colonies. This was the monster who had killed millions of his people. This was the enemy he had been fighting his whole adult life. He should have been afraid. He should have run. He should have done anything except what he actually did. He walked toward her, Dot, step by step. He crossed the great hall. His footsteps echoed in the silence. Thyra watched him approach with those burning golden eyes. She did not move. She did not speak. When he was close enough to touch her, he stopped. For a long moment, neither of them said anything. Human and Valori, soldier and commander. 2 enemies who had every reason to kill each other. Then, Thyra did something that made no sense. She lowered her head, Dot, in Valori culture. Lowering your head to someone meant profound respect. It meant acknowledgement. It meant that you saw them as worthy. Thyra, one of the most powerful beings in the galaxy, was bowing to a simple human soldier. She spoke. Her voice was deep and rumbling, like distant thunder. But she spoke in human language, carefully and slowly. She said that he saved her daughter, her blood, her future. She said that by their oldest law, he was now part of her house. She said that he was hers. And she was as Do-hyun did not know what to say. He had expected threats. He had expected demands. He had expected anything except this. Before he could respond, he heard a sound behind him. Small footsteps. Quick and eager. He turned around. Vila was running toward him. She was here. Somehow, she was here on this ship. The humans must have sent her as part of the negotiation. Or maybe Thyra had demanded her return. Do-hyun did not know. He did not care. Vila crashed into his legs and wrapped all 4 arms around him. She was clicking and chirping with joy, her compound eyes bright with happiness. She said something in her language. 2 words that Do-hyun somehow understood, even without translation. My human. My shield. Do-hyun felt tears in his eyes. He knelt down and hugged her back, this strange alien child who had somehow become precious to him. She clicked contentedly and pressed her face against his chest. When he looked up, he saw something impossible. Thyra was watching them, and her golden eyes were soft, almost warm. She said something else. She said that she did not understand humans. She said that she had killed so many of them. She said that she had always believed they were weak and worthless dogs. She paused. Then she said that she was wrong. Do-hyun stood up, Vila still clinging to his leg. He faced the great matriarch and spoke for the first time. He said that Valori and humans were not so different. He said that both species loved their children. Both species would do anything to protect them. He said that maybe that was enough. Thyra was silent for a long moment. Then she made a sound that Do-hyun had never heard from a Valori before. She laughed. It was a strange sound, clicking and rumbling at the same time. But it was definitely a laugh. She said that he was either very brave or very stupid. Do-hyun smiled. He said that he had been called both, and in that great hall, surrounded by ancient carvings and golden light, something changed. The war was not over. The hatred was not gone. But a door had opened. A possibility had been born, because a human had shielded an enemy child, and now the enemy's mother wanted to make him family. 1 year had passed since Park Do-hyun first set foot on the Valori diplomatic vessel. 1 year since he faced High Commander Thyra in that great hall. 1 year since the galaxy held its breath and waited to see what would happen next. So much had changed. Do-hyun now lived aboard Thyra's flagship. He had his own quarters, decorated with both human and Valori objects. A photograph of his dead sister sat on a shelf next to a Valori crystal that Vela had given him. Two worlds, two cultures, both part of his life now. He had learned so much in that year. He had learned the Valori language with its clicks and hums that once sounded like noise but now made perfect sense. He had learned their history, their customs, their ancient laws. He had learned that they were not the mindless monsters he had always believed. They were people. Strange people. Alien people. The people all the same. Vela followed him everywhere. She was his shadow, his constant companion. She had grown taller in the past year. Her shell had started to darken, moving from lavender toward the deeper purple of adolescence. But she still looked at him with those same trusting compound eyes. She still called him her human, her shield. She taught him Valori songs while he taught her human ones. She showed him how to play Valori games while he taught her chess. They spent hours together, talking about everything and nothing, building a bridge between two worlds, one conversation at a time. Thyra watched them. She always watched them. At first, Do-hyun had been terrified of her. How could he not be? She was the most powerful Valori in the Empire. She had killed millions of humans. She could crush him with one claw. But slowly, that terror had faded. He began to see past her fearsome exterior. He saw how she looked at Vela with soft eyes full of love. He saw how she worked tirelessly to keep her people safe. He saw how the weight of command pressed down on her shoulders every single day. She was not a monster. She was a mother, a leader, a person carrying impossible burdens. One night, they found themselves alone in the ship's observatory. Great windows showed the stars stretching out forever in all directions. The light of distant suns painted their faces in gold and silver. Thyra spoke first. Her voice was quiet, not the thunder it usually was. She said that she had been thinking about that day on the station. She said that she had watched the recording 1,000 times. She asked why he did it. Why did he save Vela? He knew what she was. He knew she was his enemy. Why did he risk everything? Do-hyun was silent for a long moment. He looked out at the stars and thought about the question. He thought about the moment in that burning medical bay. He thought about the small, terrified child looking up at him. He said that she was afraid. He said that she was small. He said that none of the reasons for war mattered when a child was crying in the dark. Thyra made a sound. It was not a laugh. It was something deeper, something sadder. Her golden eyes closed, and when they opened again, they were wet with moisture. She said that humans were the strangest creatures in the galaxy. She said that they were weak and soft and short-lived. She said that they should have been easy to defeat. She paused. Then she said that they were also the strongest creatures she had ever known. Not strong in body, but strong in heart. Strong in ways that the Valori had forgotten how to be. Do-hyun turned to look at her. In the starlight, she did not look like a monster. She looked tired. She looked lonely. She looked like someone who had carried hatred for so long that she had forgotten what it felt like to put it down. He asked if they could stop the war. Not win it. Not lose it. Just stop it. Thyra was quiet for a very long time. Then she said that she would try. The negotiations began slowly. Both sides were suspicious. Both sides had lost too much. The hatred ran deep, like poison in the blood. But Do-hyun stood in the middle and refused to move. He became the bridge. When humans were angry, he reminded them that Valori children laughed and played just like human children. When Valori were angry, he reminded them that humans would die to protect the innocent just like Valori would. Slowly, painfully, things began to change. The Treaty of Kevin was signed 1 year to the day after the attack that brought Do-hyun and Vela together. The ceremony was held on the rebuilt station, now a symbol of hope instead of destruction. Cameras from both civilizations captured the moment. High Commander Thera stood at the signing table, her claws resting gently on the shoulder of a human man in a simple black suit. Beside them, a young Valori girl with a darkening purple shell held his hand and smiled at the crowd. Reporters asked Doyen how it felt to be the first human formally adopted into a Valori matriarch's house. They asked what it meant to be called the Shield by both species. They asked if he thought peace would last. Doyen looked down at Vela. She looked back at him with love in her compound eyes. Then he looked at Thera, who nodded once, slowly, with respect. He said that it felt like coming home. The war was not truly over. There would be more conflicts, more misunderstandings, more pain. The scars of 11 years could not heal in one day, but it was a beginning, because one human soldier had thrown himself over an enemy child, because one alien mother had seen honor in her enemy's sacrifice, because a little girl with a lavender shell had looked up at a bleeding stranger and seen someone worth trusting. The galaxy was vast and cold and full of darkness. But sometimes, a single act of mercy could light a fire that nothing could put out. And across the stars, for the first time in 11 years, humans and Valori alike dared to hope, because humanity's greatest weapon had never been their ships or their guns. It was their stubborn, impossible, beautiful insistence on protecting the helpless, even when the helpless wore the face of their enemy.